Welcome to the R Farm. Today I have my good friend Jake Olivera. He is also known as Rewire with Jake. So maybe you've seen him on Instagram, maybe you've seen him on TikTok, maybe you've even seen him on YouTube. But Jake, I have a important question for you today. It seems like mental health is worse than it's ever been, despite all the therapy, meds, YouTube videos, and awareness. What do you feel like is missing?
A very good question, Jackson. Thank you very much. So, in psychology, I come from a provisional psychologist background, studying it for 6 years. I was also teaching it for 5 years. And a lot of the time, you're only treating the mental plane. So, we live on three different planes of existence, the most important being the spiritual, the second, mental, and then the third, which is the physical. So, the spiritual plane is essentially you're a soul that comes to earth to learn duality. So, we are an individual. We are an individual jewel who comes to Earth to learn duality. And what I mean by duality is the masculine and feminine, the good and the bad, the positive and negative, the right and the wrong, right? So we come here as a spiritual being to Earth to learn certain rules or life lessons. And then we have a central nervous system, so brain, spinal cord, and we experience life around us. Through the mental plane, which is a lot of our thoughts, emotions, beliefs that stem from it, we then have the effect of our physical reality. So the mental plane is the plane of cause, so where everything is created, and then the physical plane is the effect. And what I mean by this is that in the mental plane, if I wanted to brush my teeth, right, I first have to have the thought of brushing my teeth for me then to appear, for it to then appear in my physical reality. So I feel that is the reason why a lot of people are finding themselves maybe going to therapy, having a little bit of trouble, maybe having the breakthroughs that they are after. And it's essentially around the reason that we live on three different planes of existence. And if we are out of alignment on these three different planes, it can be quite difficult for us to feel a certain type of way in the reality that we currently find ourselves in.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about all of those different planes of existence. But I remember, if I'm not mistaken, you were either a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I never fully know the difference, and I don't think the audience does either. But tell us a little bit about why you decided to get into that field and why you ultimately kind of walked away from it.
Hmm. So growing up, I had this feeling within inside me. I was always really inquisitive about people. I loved learning about people, relationships, just jobs, work, whatever it was. I was always asking questions. This then turned into a real need for me to know about human behavior. I was really interested in human behavior. So when I graduated school, I began studying psychology. I did my 3 years and then I completed my honors, my thesis. And then I took a couple years off and I went to work in the field at a school as a well-being coordinator. So a psychologist is essentially just dealing with people and their emotions and what they have been going through or what has transpired as well. A psychiatrist is just very, very similar, but they are more so prescribing the medication that they deem a person with a certain diagnosis needs.
So you ended up walking away from that. And was it that you felt that the current like modalities that were being espoused weren't really
Hmm.
getting people the transformation that they
Hmm.
wanted? Like talk to us a little bit about like what you felt like was potentially lacking.
Hmm. So I think psychology is great, and I apply it to my own modality at the moment. However, I wasn't in alignment with the labeling of disorders or the prescribing of medication without addressing the spiritual or the physical plane. I remember I was with many clients who were, maybe in terms of their lifestyle, weren't very active, they weren't sleeping properly, but then, I had my bosses or I was being instructed in certain supervision that, you may need to prescribe or to tell them about the advantages of medication. But I was like, we haven't addressed X, Y, and Z. Then why are we going to prescribe them medication if we haven't addressed certain factors within their life that one can take time to extract that data from, and then two even implement. But they were so just quick to, they could just get on medication without actually realizing that yes, medication, I'm sure for people around the world, it has benefited them in some ways, but there is always a trade-off. So not saying that medication is terrible or anything like this. It's just more so they weren't willing to go down the avenue of trying other modalities or other certain factors without having to take on the medication, because a lot of people sometimes just go on the medication, they don't really improve either, and then really, you don't know exactly what it's doing inside of you. There's not all this data and research at the moment that's been able to prove these kind of things, but there are that many people talk about a lot of the side effects that they do experience with medication, and essentially they haven't tried other modalities, exercising, sleeping regularly, maybe meditating, journaling, whatever it may be, on a consistent basis. And I don't mean in terms of just doing it on a one-off. It requires repetition.
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned this holistic approach, and in the US, we kind of call this, a lot of the medical field, it treats symptoms and not the root cause. Talk to us a little bit about like how you think people should be approaching it, given that we have these, I forget if you mentioned it was 2 planes or 3 planes. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think is kind of an ideal existence if you had to, construct it for maybe a patient or somebody? Like, what should they be doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think self exploration is one of the greatest things an individual can do for oneself. So, who you think you are and who you actually are two different people. And what I mean by this is that when we come to Earth and you are born, a lot of the time people are raised by their parents or the guardians, the people closest to them. And through that, you're learning about love, you're learning about safety, you're learning about what's right, you're learning about what's wrong, you're learning how to be validated. And necessarily, this isn't right, nor is it wrong. So, in terms of this, who you think you are is just essentially the programming and conditioning that has been placed upon you by your parents, or if you weren't raised by your parents, the guardians or those people most closest to you. So, you learn this. And through this, your central nervous system and your subconscious reprogramming, your subconscious reprogramming forms from the ages, they say, from 0 to 8. I also give it another couple years. I usually say 0 to 10. And this is predominantly because we operate in alpha and theta brainwave states. So these are just more slower and programmable brainwave states. And you're more open and receptive to information during those periods of your life. However, then when you're phasing out of these years, you are moving more in beta brainwave states, which is now their faster brainwave states. So it's harder to reprogram certain information in terms of your beliefs, what you believe is, right, wrong. So then you go off experiencing life through different experiences, but they are the beliefs that are shaping the experience. And what I mean by this, Jax, is if I like dogs and you like cats, and we see a dog in front of us, neither of the belief is right nor is it wrong. However, the belief that I have about dogs and I like dogs means I'm going to interpret the experience more favorably. I'm going to have a higher emotional output to that experience opposed to you. But neither of us are right, neither of us are wrong. It is just the belief that is interpreting the experience, which then has an emotional output that is counteracted to it. And essentially, the universal language is emotion, and that's how your reality or physical reality is created.
Yeah, maybe I can build off this example. So let's say me and Jake are walking down the street. I see a dog, he sees a dog. So we both see the same dog, but we really don't see the same dog because maybe I got bit by a dog when I was a kid and Jake hasn't. He's just had pleasant experience. Kind of talk to us about the interpretations of those two situations given the different like perspectives.
Mm. So essentially, because now you've had a certain experience where you now don't look at dogs favorably, opposed to I haven't had that experience. So if we're viewing or we're seeing the dog in front of us right now, and you think the experience is bad, and I think the experience is good, what I'm trying to say is that neither of us are right or wrong. They are just the belief through what we've experienced through our younger years, potentially, again, when your subconscious is open, that now is interpreting at the real world events. And this isn't just meant for the dog and the cat or for the dogs. It's for all your beliefs, all of them. And I know psychology, neuroscience, a lot of people are like, oh, all the evidence and all the data, but essentially like the evidence and the data is always being proven against as well. So in 5 years' time, people just forget about what was valid 5 years ago, but then it's like, oh, we found something else now. So nothing is always set in stone. And I'm not saying you have to go against the evidence and the data, but what I'm saying is more so within the beliefs that we hold about ourselves. So in terms of your individuality, like who you think you are and who you actually are, they're two different people. And a lot of the time it stems from the beliefs that a person holds about oneself. And usually the beliefs that one person holds about oneself stems from their subconscious programming, how they were raised, what environments they were accustomed to, the certain experiences they had, just like you were just speaking about the example about the dog. And then that shapes potentially how we are viewing the world, which is then creating the reality we live in via the emotional output that we are attaining to certain experiences.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting how this. I think in my field, which is more in the relationship sphere, people are pretty bought into the idea of like different attachments, and they kind of understand that they get these attachments like anxious or secure in childhood. So I think most people are kind of bought into, hey, a portion of their identity is formed so young, and they need to do active work. So now that we kind of understand that, like, hey, not only is your identity based off your beliefs and your identity is relational to other people, talk to us a little bit about what they can do with this information, because of course it's good. It's like, oh, it's interesting that my identity is not fully mine, but how do they actually go about like shifting and having these like identity shifts in the spiritual sense and physical?
It's a good question, Jax. So essentially, what I talk to my clients about and I speak about online is always journaling. So if you have beliefs that's come up, it's writing them down. Write down what attachment you have to them, and by attachment, I mean the emotion that is attached to it. Because a belief is either controlling you or it's serving you. Because we just spoke about how a belief cannot be right nor can it be wrong. So beliefs can be categorized in two different ways. They're either serving you or they're not. So the ones that you ruminate about on a daily basis that aren't serving you, I would begin to write them down. And the more you're able to write them down and then question them, you are able to gain evidence to suggest that belief is not true.
So let's take the dog example, because I think it's very right in people's minds. So I write down, I logically know I shouldn't be afraid of the dogs. I logically know I shouldn't do it. So I write that out. Like, how do people start rewriting these stories when they have these built up anxieties or fears that they've kind of inherited through
Hmm.
childhood or their growing up age?
Mm. It all comes through awareness. So understanding like why you think like this. Because if you're able to understand why you think a certain way, you're then able to question why you think like that. Whereas if people believe that is set in stone and then that's the only way to think, then you're not going to be able to change that belief. And essentially, some people I talk to, they don't want to change their beliefs, and fair enough. That is by all means fine. But just know that if you are not going to change that belief or alter it in a way, and when I say alter, it's more so transmuting, because energy cannot be created nor can it be destroyed. It can only be transmuted. So your belief can be altered in a way that best serves the reality that you desire, right? So if I had the belief that I didn't like dogs, but I knew I was going to be surrounded by dogs for the rest of my life, it is either that I alter the belief that I have through becoming more inquisitive about how I attain that belief and why I believe that, and then working on ways through safety and regulation in transmuting that belief. I'll then expose myself to maybe puppies or to one dog. Then I'd be able to go out in a farm of dogs. So working my way up gradually. Because essentially, if I did not alter that belief, I either live my life in misery, or I can transmute that belief and I'll be able to live a joyous and happy life with the dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I want to touch on, because I know this is of serious interest to you, is let's talk a little bit about quantum. And actually, let's put a real quick disclaimer in there. I should have put it in the beginning. So, for people that are a little bit skeptical of spirituality, because I have more of a relationship audience, a lot of the women are going to be pretty bought into, hey, there's some metaphysical plane. But for people that are out there, they're like, I don't know, it sounds kind of woo woo. What do you kind of say to people
Mm,
being like, no, there is something here?
mm. That's a good question. And essentially, it's more so along the lines I would talk in terms of this would be your thoughts are electric and your emotions, they're magnetic. And when they're combined, they create your electromagnetic signature, which is just a fancy way for saying your level of vibration. Because again, you on top of all the planes is the spiritual plane. You've come to earth as a soul to learn and experience duality. You're an individual, you come here to learn duality. So in saying that, what I used to think about a lot of the time was that there was laws for everything in life. There was laws for everything, everywhere I went, work, school, universities, jobs, sports teams, whatever it was, government. And I was thinking there has to be one for the universe, for nature, for all these kind of things. So I started to question it. Then I started to read more into it, and then found that, of course, we are governed by the laws of the universe, which are also called the Hermetic principles. These are ancient principles that the Hermetics made long back in the day, and what I call the hidden knowledge that essentially they don't teach in schools or universities. Because, and this is my main point, is that I thought life was happening to me, right? I just thought it was all by chance. But there was a few occurrences where I was like, I think I've created this. I really think I've created this. And then I started to realize that life is happening through me and not to me. And what I mean by this is it's happening through your nervous system, like I just spoke about briefly at the beginning. It is happening via your nervous system. So your nervous system uh, is the transmitter to the universe, and essentially, what your nervous system feels through certain types of emotions, it projects out into the universe, and then the universe mirrors that back via your physical reality. Because we only see 0.035% of reality, which is very, very small, which is nothing. It's basically make believe. But if we're only seeing 0.035% of reality, that means there is so much more that exists than just our eyesight and what we're seeing in front of us. And then if you're understanding that, you're thinking, okay, then where is this created? And this is created via your thoughts. So the thoughts that you consistently think, which are electric, will then contribute to certain emotions that you have attached to those thoughts via the experiences that you are having within your life. And then those emotions that you feel within you then project out to the universe. Because I work with many female clients as well, and a lot of the time the predominant thing that we're working towards is attracting a partner. And I'm always talking to them in terms of, because they're blaming this person or they're blaming that person. And I'm like, that's fine. Of course, that is what was happening. But if the physical reality is the effect, the physical plane is the effect, what was it that you were feeling within inside yourself that was then showing you in your physical reality what you weren't giving yourself?
Yeah, and I want to double back on some points here. So for anyone that's still a little skeptical, we all know that people have it kind of an energy signature, and this is what Jake is talking a lot about. It's like, hey, your thoughts are electric, and your emotions, if I'm not mistaken, are magnetic. And if you are sat next to somebody and you're like, damn, this person is pissed off, and you just want to get as far away from them, or they're super sad, and you can just feel that energy. That's essentially what we're talking about when there's a certain rate of vibration to people. Some people are high energy. Some people are like, you just want to get away from them as fast as
Mm,
possible. And then when we're talking about hermetic principles, this is from ancient Egypt. This is essentially what a lot of religions are based off of, and these are universal principles. Like everything vibrates. Hey, your inner world reflects your outer world. Anything you want to add there? And then I do want to get on to essentially how people can attract their partner, because you were making a very interesting point there.
mm. So essentially, I think it's the fourth hermetic principle. It's the law of correspondence: as within, so without; as above, so below. So basically saying what you feel within will appear within your exterior reality. So just as you see a beautiful tall tree, it is as tall as it is on its way down. And that's is essentially what it's saying about life. Also, another principle, the first principle is the law of mentalism. So all is mind, everything is created in mind. And what I mean by this is, think about, like, I give this example, like if that for a plane to exist, right, it just didn't appear, right? People were probably going on the boats. They were going, wow, this is way too long. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, how can we travel from Portugal to Australia without having to go by boat? How can we do that? It first had to be thought. They're like, okay, why don't we go in the sky? Why don't we go in the sky? Okay, well, what's it going to entail in the sky? Okay, we're going to need an engine. We're going to need a jet. So it all started in the mind. This is what the first hermetic principle is saying. All is
Mhm.
of mentalism, the law of mentalism. All is in mind. Everything is created within your mind, and this goes for your reality as well. And then it moves on to the second hermetic principle, which is the law of vibration. So nothing rests. Everything is always in motion, even your emotions. So emotion is just energy in motion. And if energy cannot be created, nor can it be destroyed, nor can your emotions. And this is what a lot of people tend to do. They tend to suppress their emotions or avoid them. But what you avoid and what you suppress stores within your body, because just like energy cannot be created nor destroyed, nor can your emotions. So you must be willing to transmute those emotions as you are going through your life or perceiving certain different experiences.
Yeah, I want to talk about a few hermetic principles. One is, as within, so without. So this is essentially the mirror principle. It's like, hey, you have to smile to the mirror before it smiles back. Like the mirror doesn't smile first. So talk to us a little bit about how this pertains to attracting a partner, because a lot of women, they do experience a lot of negative issues in the dating market. But until they change, they shift that vibration into like a very, open and receptive state, they're not really going to find their person. At least that's my perspective. I'd be curious to hear yours.
Mm, mm. So a lot of the time when I am speaking to my female clients, they are struggling with this. And in terms of it's being able to shift what is within you, and then that will appear in the in the external world or in the physical realm. So a lot of the time when they talk about previous partners or previous relationships and how they were wronged by or there was any wrongdoings, I ask them a simple question. It's what were you feeling within yourself during that period that was appearing in your physical reality? What was it that you weren't giving yourself? Was it the fear, shame, guilt? Was it anxiety? Because the more you feel these things within your nervous system, and if your nervous system is the neurotransmitter to the universe, then that appears in your physical reality. Because we're going back to the fact that you only see 0.035% of reality, which is nothing. You're basically seeing nothing. Even though it feels so real to you, it's nothing. So what you're feeling within, it's just appearing in a physical format, in an individual, in a partner as well. So if you want to attract a certain type of person or partner, and usually I always stem it back to love. Love is infinite, love is source, right? So if you're looking, you must feel that love within yourself first, because yeah, just like you said, it's a good analogy. If I was to stand in front of the mirror and I really wanted it to smile, it's not going to smile at me before I do that for myself first. And this is what I find a lot of people within the dating market or the dating world have been accustomed to, is they go from one relationship to the other, and they just keep seeing in physical form the same patterns and cyclical nature follow up. Yes, it might be a different face and a different body, but essentially what you avoid or suppress is felt via your nervous system, and it's going to appear in your physical reality. And this also goes in terms of when I do talk about relationships or people talk about attracting a partner, you want to attract the right one, right? So even when you're attracting certain partners, you don't want the relationship to be very difficult. And I feel like in this day and age, a lot of people like, oh, relationships are meant to be tough, this and that. That's a false belief. They're not meant to be tough. If you believe that, then sure. But essentially, like, not that it's always trauma bonding, but you are projecting your reality onto another individual. You are seeing them through your lens and expecting them to change via how you think the world is, right? And essentially, that is not what love is, right? Love is working together and understanding one another, and then being able to move together or progress together whilst healing ourselves individually.
Yeah, and that ties into the principles. Kind of, there's ebbs and flows of everything. There's a pendulum swing. There's going to be good times and bad times, and can you ride out those times with somebody else? There's a principle I really want to get into because I think it's the most confusing principle to me, but it's very interesting to all the listeners. Is that everything has a gender, and when they talk about gender, they're not literally talking about sex. Can you talk a little bit about masculine and feminine energy and how kind of gender appears?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Jack. So, in terms of the masculine and feminine, we all embody the masculine and feminine within us. Yes, there may be different genders, but essentially the masculine and feminine exists in everything. It exists in your brain, it exists in different body parts that you have. And essentially within a relationship as well, what you will find is that one, it's the duality of it as well. What I was just talking to you in terms of the duality, and also you're looking into the polarity. So if you have a certain figure that is very masculine, and that doesn't always need to be in the male essence as well. Sometimes females take on that role. So what you'll find within a relationship is when this polarization, and in terms of the polarization, I mean the masculine and the feminine, is not balanced to the extent of what the relationship requires, then you're running into certain difficulties, because a female may be embodying too much of her masculine traits, opposed to the male who may be more in his feminine. And if a female wants to be taken care of, wants to be provided for, and she's having to make all the decisions, she's now out of polarity within herself. And she may not be aware of this or conscious of this, but then this is where the projection begins, because they feel unsafe when they are taking on certain roles that they don't want to embody. Yes, they may think they want to embody them, but that is from the beliefs and the upbringings that they have potentially had. And I'm not saying by any means that a female can't take on masculine roles, or male can't take on feminine roles, because we need the balance or the dance between the two. As a male, we need to provide the presence, the nurturing, the caring for the female to feel safe, you know. So you need to have the balance of that. It's not just in terms of, if you're a male you need to be all this masculine type. No, it means you need to embody the two. You need to embody the two, and it's the exact same for females as well. You need to sometimes be rational and logic and be supportive of the other side as well. So that is that's the last principle of the Hermetics that they talk about.
Yeah. So clearly, you've taken a lot of inspiration from the Kabbalion. Are there any other spiritual texts that you find particularly helpful?
So yeah, I read a lot of books. I read the Bible a lot as well, in terms of the metaphysical aspect, in terms of looking at it via consciousness. A lot of books. You can get what you want if you find it within yourself. Um, I'd have to, maybe I can list them in the spot when this is listed, but it's
Yeah,
off the
yeah,
top
you
of
could
my
just
head.
send me a list. I always hear people say reality, trans surfing, pocket full of money, those the classic texts. So
Mm,
talk to me a little bit about, like, let's say somebody, they're listening, they're like, you know what? I hear what Jake's saying about, feminine energy. Maybe I've been a little bit too much in my masculine, and I actually do want to attract a more masculine guy. I'm always about like practical things. We talked a little bit earlier about, hey, you can journal, kind of surface some of these emotions. How do you think people can kind of shift into the reality that they desire?
mm. So this is a really good one as well. So in terms of, I'm massive on journaling, because this is understanding yourself. So in order for anything to change, you first need awareness to the issue. So if I was
Mhm.
overweight and everyone was telling me I was overweight, but I didn't actually understand that I was overweight, I'm not going to do anything about it. So you first need awareness into the issue, or awareness to what it is that you want to change within your reality. So it would be implementing, again, journaling, extracting the beliefs, also writing down your goals, or what you want within a man or what you want within a woman. And then I would move into meditation. I would move into meditation and visualization, because through these practices, meditation is good because it's stillness. You're then practicing your thoughts not to run. You're feeling safe within your nervous system. So you're practicing safety. And then one I love doing is visualization. And this is almost what I like to call like a cheat code. So I will bring up past photos of myself when I was younger or when I was a child. And I call this inner child healing. And I work with my clients through this manner. Is we look at pictures of our younger selves and we try to emulate certain positive vibrations through those experiences. So retracing the memories that you have of where you felt really loved, of where you were excited, of where you felt pure joy, of where you felt a lot of happiness. And you are visualizing these moments, right? And why this is an important practice is because most people are delusional in the aspect of a negative self-serving bias. So they're thinking about all the doubts, shames, fears, all of the negative things that have transpired. And then what this is doing is you're moving yourself into more positive or higher vibrations or higher emotional output, right? And you're basically convincing, or not tricking your brain. You're just reminding yourself you are this person. You are still this inner child. You're still this person you need to take care of. You're still this person who is loved. You're still this person who is happy. You're still this person that is always that that is still creative and pure. You are still this person. And then through using these practices, you are putting yourself in a higher vibratory state, in more of a positive emotional output. And then through that, you are then able to affirm or practice the manifestation of what it is that you desire. But why this is important is because you are embodying what it is within yourself via your nervous system for it to appear in your physical reality.
That makes a ton of sense. Now, one thing, I know you work with a lot of top performers, a lot of entrepreneurs. I know some of your clients. Like, these are people that largely from the outside looking in seem to have their entire life figured out. Talk to us a little bit about, like, for people that are interested in what you do, and how are these, what are these high performers struggling with, and how are you essentially helping them? Is it understanding their inner child? Is it shifting their frequency? Like, what are you specifically doing?
So essentially, what a lot of people talk about in terms of manifestation is you manifest the reality. But a lot of people manifest their reality, but essentially, if you don't feel a certain type of way within your reality, you haven't manifested it. Because in terms of manifestation, manifestation is all to do with feeling. Yes, it's what appears in your physical reality, but what's the point of having something if you're not happy having it? right? So what we do, or what I work with my clients, is working through a modality that combines your belief extraction, then moving into your inner child healing, shadow work, then integrating nervous system healing and subconscious reprogramming, and then moving into the metaphysics. And I do this through an approach where it's integrated as well. So you're able to explore yourself. So in order, like I said before, for you to change anything in your life, you first need an awareness, right? You need to be aware of what it is that you have created, the identity that you have created that is not serving you. So then through that awareness, you're able then, which is very important, to extract certain beliefs that are not serving you or they're controlling you. You then move through your inner child healing, because a lot of the time your inner child and shadow work, this is where your subconscious was programmed from the ages of 0 to 8. So going back there to understand, have that awareness of what it is that transpired in your life and how that identity, how your identity now might be mirroring that state. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of the athletes that I work with, they're earning the money, they have the luxurious lives, but they're noticing that from the ages of 10 to 15, they've just repeated the same cyclical pattern, just in different environments. And again, if you don't feel a certain type of way in your reality, there is no point in having it. And what I mean by this is that, and I talk to my 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 clients about this, and also my audience, is that it is not the outcome you desire. It is not the partner. It is not the cars. It's not the job. It's not the money. It is never the outcome. It is the emotion that is tied to that outcome. Because if there was no emotion tied to that outcome, you wouldn't want it. You simply wouldn't want it. It is what you are giving meaning to these certain outcomes. And I'm here to teach that you can have it. I'm not here to say you can't have it, but why is it that you will wait 5, 10, 15 years, 2 years to find a partner, to feel love, to feel cared for, to feel joy, when you can give that to yourself today? You can give that yourself today. And look, not that you're telling the universe this, but you're hacking the system. Because if you're able to provide it to yourself today, you will most likely be able to see it appear in your physical reality faster than what you think. Because the universal law, or the universal language, is emotion. So the emotion you're willing to give to yourself, just like we spoke about in terms of the law of correspondence, as within, so without, the emotion you're able to give yourself will then appear within your physical reality for whatever it is that you transpire. And what a lot of people do is they think they've manifested their reality by attaining the job, by attaining the house, by attaining the cars. But essentially, you haven't, because you have not attained the most important thing within the outcome that you have desired, which is the emotion.
Absolutely. Well, I wish we could talk to you all night. Well, for you, it'd be all morning. I know you recently launched a community. Tell us a little bit about the community, because I know people are going to be interested in that.
Thanks, Jax. So essentially, I created a community 3 weeks ago. We launched it. It's live now. So I had a massive issue when I was going through psychology, or training to become a psychologist within university. I thought the price of psychology was absurd. To charge in Australia, they charge $250, sometimes even $350 for someone to go talk about their issues for an hour, which I didn't seem was logical. And then even moving through university, and then also my practices, and also teaching at university, I found that they really didn't teach anything at all. They didn't teach nervous system regulation at university. They didn't teach subconscious reprogramming at university. I taught over 10 to 12 subjects: cognitive psychology, psychological assessment, social psychology. You're thinking the core subjects, they're going to have some of this information, if it's probably the most important information, and they didn't. So I've created a community now where it's a cup of coffee a week, where you can access a full range of healing modalities, which includes, there's 5 different concepts in awareness, understanding your patterns, moving through nervous system regulation, quantum laws, and then the integration of self. So they're 30-minute to 60-minute masterclasses where I'm educating you, raising your awareness into what it is that potentially has kept you stuck within the reality that you're currently in, and then have resources and worksheets for you to work on, so that you can then begin to manifest or enter the reality that you desire through increasing yourself, having practices that you can implement on a daily basis. And then we also have weekly Q&A calls where you can come in, you can talk to me about anything that has been transpiring within your life, what you were struggling with, and of course the module content, which we always discuss. And then through that, I also add modules every month. I also have different events within the community. And essentially, I created it so then people don't have to pay this astronomical amount to go see a psychologist or see a therapist. And which most of the time I've spoken to a lot of my friends, family, they haven't been seeing the results that they are after. And look, of course, it's mine, but I have had fantastic feedback through the community. And then also my audience can vouch as well that a lot of the things that I've been teaching have been changing their lives.
Absolutely. And where should people go to learn more about you? Of course, I'll put your Instagram and whatever links you want in the description, but where should they go to learn more about you and the community?
Sure, they would find me on Rewire with Jake on Instagram. I'm also on YouTube. I just started YouTube last week or the week before, but my most active social media platform is Rewire with Jake on Instagram. So you're more than welcome to follow me on there. You can also DM me. I'm more than happy to chat, and you can find me in the community as well.
Hey, love to hear that. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Aura Farm, and hopefully we'll have you on for another episode soon. We appreciate you coming by.